you're not just doing your job, you're constantly figuring out your job, and that's exhausting, and that's what we end up calling pressure. But a lot of that pressure is actually confusion. If you've ever worked in a kitchen and it felt like this is way harder than it should be, not just physically but mentally, like you're constantly catching up, you're constantly reacting, then you're probably right. But not for the reason you think. Because it's not just the pressure, it's the system you're working inside. You're listening to Fugitive Chefs, a podcast about what happens when chefs step outside the traditional kitchen path. I'm Furkan. I've worked in kitchens like Noma and Mugaritz, and today I work outside restaurants, currently as Senior Innovation Chef at Kraft Heinz. And this episode comes from something I've been thinking about a lot recently, especially after speaking to Fabian on the last week's episode, who's building tools to improve how kitchens actually run. But this one is not about his product. It's about something bigger I think most chefs feel, but they don't really have a language for. When kitchens feel hard, we usually explain it in very obvious ways. We say it's long hours, it's physical, it's stressful, it's service pressure, and all of that is true. But at the same time, here's what I've also started questioning. If that's the only reason, then why do kitchens feel more intense and chaotic than other jobs? Because if you think about it, healthcare is intense, construction is very physical, startups are stressful, entrepreneurship, all this is super stressful. It's unpredictable. But kitchens feel messy, like things are falling apart very quickly in there. And I don't think that's just because of the work itself. I think it's because of how the work is structured in most restaurants that we know today. Let me explain what I mean with something very simple. Think about prep. Think about how prep is done in kitchens. In most kitchens, you will come in, you check a prep list, but that prep list is written differently every day. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's not. Then you ask someone, do we need more of this? You check your stock. They say, people you ask if they need more, they say, yeah, maybe I think so. Or they say, check the fridge or ask the sous chef. So now when you're already checking, asking, confirming, and if this is happening for everything, think of every process in the kitchen. If it's so people dependent and people controlled, it happens for recipes. You might find 2-3 versions of it. And this is not just restaurants. It's also in like massive innovation kitchens and companies that I work with today. There's like 6-7 versions of same recipes, different formats, different measurements, different times if they've been updated or used for particular events or particular purposes. Ordering, imagine the whole ordering processes are also tied into these kind of messy systems. It's all in someone's head. The station setup depends on who's working that day. Every station in most restaurants, I'm not talking about the fine dining because there's a lot of other dynamics of labor that make things work the way they work. But in most restaurants, the work becomes very personal. So what happens in all these situations is that you're not just doing your job. You're constantly figuring out your job, and that's exhausting, and that's what we end up calling pressure. But a lot of that pressure is actually confusion. It's not really the physical pressure of the job. Fixing things last minute, repeating conversations, making mistakes that could have been avoided, that's not intensity, that's inefficiency. And that's what makes, when I spoke about construction and all these jobs, when I said them, these are really intense jobs. But ours seems like, for most, and this is, I can't put all of them into one bubble, but most restaurants which are chaotic and where I hear people from that they are stressed in those environments, it's the inefficiency. It's not the intensity. So the question is, if this is so obvious, why hasn't it changed? And from what I've seen, it comes down to 3 things. First, time. No one has time to step back and fix systems in restaurants. At least that's what people keep saying, that they do not have the time for it. You're always in service mode, you're always reacting, you're never really designing for a system, you're never really intentionally making a system that will work, but you're just reacting to a system that doesn't exist, to a system that has come up and was very personal to the person who has been in that position before you, who's possibly managing your job. It's based upon them. Second, I would say the second factor in this is culture. There's this belief that this is just how kitchens are. The struggle is a part of the identity, that if it's chaotic, it means real. And actually, if it only means real if it's chaotic. It only means if you work in a kitchen. If it is chaotic, it's like together in a very, very respected way for some reason, for no real reason to it. And I think that's dangerous. And I would say the third piece over here is lack of exposure. Most chefs have never seen a different way of working. So they assume this is normal. They keep switching between kitchens, which are all chaotic. So it feels like it's normal. And if something feels normal, you don't really question it, right? Now, this is the part I wish someone had told me earlier. If you're in a kitchen and thinking, I'm not fast enough. I am not organized enough. I am not cut out for this. Sometimes, believe me, it's not you. It could be you. I mean, this is a podcast which a lot of people listen. It's about you how to interpret this, because this is me speaking my mind out loud, and everything I say is my truth. It's not your truth, but there are pieces that could match your puzzle. So when I say that, when you feel you're not fast enough or organized enough or not cut out for this, it could be that it's not you. There is a high chance that it's just that you're inside a very badly designed system. And no matter how skilled you are, a bad system will always slow you down. And that changes drastically how you see your career. Because now it's not just about becoming better. It's about understanding the environment you're in and what can you do within that environment without questioning it and challenging it if you're not in that position. If you're in that position, of course, it's upon you to challenge it. But if you're not in that position, judge yourself very relative to the environment you're in. Now, obviously, you can't redesign your whole kitchen tomorrow, but you can start noticing things differently. Start asking yourself, making notes, journaling, especially if you're interning, especially if you're starting out, because you have the room to do that for yourself. Where do mistakes keep happening? What do we repeat every single day? Where do people get confused? Those are system problems, and even small changes help. Writing clear prep list, organizing recipes, documenting what works in these scenarios, not because it's corporate, not because suddenly we're going to all work in offices and take notes and sit down on desks, but it's because it creates breathing room. And honestly, that's what most kitchens are missing. I feel they're missing this because in the rush of things, they're just repeating very consciously what they know doesn't work, but it's just going to get them to the end of that service. So if you're thinking about these things more seriously, that's exactly why I have built Fugitive Chef Circle. We meet once a month. It's a small group where chefs are figuring out all of this together. The link is in the description, and maybe the takeaway from this episode is simple. Kitchens are not just hard. They're not just hard places to work at. They're often badly engineered. And once you see that, you stop blaming yourself for everything. If this resonated, share it with someone who might need to hear it. I will see you in the next episode.